And welcome again to the next episode of America's Future Series. This is Zaheer Ali. Welcome to Space Talks with Z. I'm Z. How are you all doing? And thank you to our sponsors for making this series possible. Today we have with us Manuj Aggarwal of Tetranoodle. He is a really interesting individual, a technical person by training who has moved into the mental mastery uh, space and helps people and teams understand the right solutions for their mindset, their communication, and how to be the best they can be. So thank you, Manoj, for joining us. You know, it's really an honor to have you here, and we're really looking forward
Thank you
to
so much for
discussing
having
with
me.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So Manoj, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to this part of your work? I mean, you know, having a very technical education and training originally, and
Yeah.
then being a
Yeah.
CTO no less, and then moving
Yeah. Yeah.
into
Yeah.
the space of thinking about how teams work together, how people communicate, and
Sure.
and
Sure.
and do those things.
Yeah.
Your journey is fascinating.
Awesome. Okay. Sure. Well, I mean, as you mentioned, I started off as an engineer in the software industry, and I worked my way up through becoming a leader, team lead, then director, the CTO, all the while working with people from all over the world remotely, and in physical, like a physical proximity as well. And as you know, as technical people, our main task is to look at a problem, come up with a solution, and implement the solution, get the outcome that the business is asking for. And in many engagements that I had, I noticed that when I give a solution to a problem, it people actually, instead of reacting positively, they were acting very negatively towards that. And I was really puzzled by that. I'm trying to help them and give them the direct solution to their problem, and they're not embracing that, they're not adopting it, and in fact they are getting hostile towards me. And I was really puzzled by that. Not only that, in my personal life I had similar challenges where, with my spouse I had a lot of arguments with my kids, and I was like, uh, I think I am a smart enough guy to figure out there is a pattern going on here, like, I
And
could
then maybe you
blame
are part of the battle,
uh,
right?
exactly. And I was, as an adult, it's very easy to say, okay, my coworkers don't get me, or my spouse doesn't get me, and we can blame it on them. But when it came to my kids, I'm like, I cannot really blame that on them. So there has got to be something wrong with me, the way that I'm communicating. And then slowly, that led me to my own discoveries. First of all, my own mind. So I went deep into meditation, some yoga practices, which allowed me to look into my own brain, and raise my own self-awareness about what is important to me, how do I react to certain situations, what kind of words do I use, how do I present myself to people, and how does that make other people feel. And that's what sort of led me to discover that what we think, as especially as technical people, as engineers, what we think is important is not as important to a lot of people, and vice versa. We all have different motivations, subconscious motivations to take action. And those motivations generally, we for a lack of a better word, we generally think the money and success, those are the kind of tangible outcomes that drive people. But as we go deeper and deeper into this psychology, we uncover that money and success is very small percentage of what the actual motivations are behind what drives us as humans. So what those motivations are, it could be like leaving a legacy. You are here to build something and show to the world that you are capable of doing it, and you leave a legacy behind. For some people, that is much more important than earning a wage. So when we find out by talking to these people, then we can figure out, okay, how can we get them to build something that will live beyond their lifetime, because that will motivate them. For some other people, it could be trust. They want to be able to trust you, that what you're saying is true, and that's when they will be able to take action. If they find any evidence of something that they cannot trust, then obviously it will discourage them from taking that action. And so there are these hidden modalities that people value more than money or success or any other motivation factor that we can put in front of them. So the idea here is to have these kind of exploration uh, conversations with them and try to figure out what really drives them deep down inside, and then facilitate the work environment, even the job that they are doing, to fit their temperament, their preference, and their things that drive them.
So that's a really amazing point, because as this, being the space talks, part of what I think we're going to do here in our chat is apply this to how it applies to space, defense, aerospace.
Sure.
One of the things that one senses is that the people in the space economy are there for passion. They are there for legacy.
Yeah, yeah.
As Robert Zubrin, the author of Mars Direct,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
Mars Direct program has
Yeah.
said many times,
Yeah.
what else happened in 1492?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nobody remembers. All they remember is Columbus.
Mhm.
1,000 years from now, all that nobody's going to remember Woodstock.
Yeah,
Nobody's going to remember Lyndon Johnson. All they're
yeah,
going to remember about 1969
yeah, yeah, yeah,
is Neil Armstrong and the moon.
yeah,
And if we get there, in 2026, all
yeah,
they're going to remember is whoever was that first person to set foot on Mars.
yeah, yeah,
So I think you mentioned a couple things. You mentioned fundamental intrinsic motivation and
yeah,
tapping into that,
yeah.
rather than kind of a carrot mentality.
Correct, correct.
Here's your next quarterly bonus.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's investment in a company,
Mhm, mhm.
equity.
Yeah,
I mean, people want those things at some level, but that's
yeah,
not going to get them to go that fundamental extra mile.
yeah,
Um, how do you see, what advice would you have for current leaders in how to tap into that?
yeah, yeah.
Because the workforce is changing dramatically too, right? Baby boomers
Mhm.
are leaving, and
Yeah,
millennials are coming into not just entry level, but into middle and senior positions. So as leaders, as you are a CTO, how would you help other leaders, particularly in the space industry, where we know there's passion, involved, there's fascination. How do they
yeah,
tap into that,
yeah.
and get the best out of their people?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, see, absolutely, you're absolutely right. Anybody who gets into space, I mean, these are not easy things to accomplish. People work really, really hard to get into these companies, these organizations, and work on some amazing projects. And obviously, they are doing that because they have the passion and they want to leave a legacy behind. Now, that is their motivation. But if they sense that the work environment or the processes or whatever their leaders are actually hindering them in getting to that legacy, that will actually become a demotivator rather than a motivator, right?
So it's like a switch. You're either on or you're off. There's no middle
Exactly.
ground on that one.
Well, I mean, some people will say, okay, things will get better. It depends on their personal
Hmm.
experience as well, because as you know, some people are optimistic, some people are pessimistic, and our brains are wired as the best pattern finding machines, and subconsciously we pick up these patterns in our lives,
I see.
and we say,
Interesting.
okay, if I try 3 times and if it doesn't work, generally it's not for me.
Right.
So if a person is a if aerospace engineer has had an experience in the past, in his life or her life,
Right.
that if I work with certain type of person, things don't work out, and they will start to subconsciously pick up those cues and then self-select themselves and say, okay, my motivation is to leave a legacy, but this person is standing in the middle of me leaving a legacy behind, so this is not the project for me, right? On the other hand, if they find that, oh, you know what, my motivation is to maintain my character and make sure that I can be the best person I can be, and this my leader is going to help me, is going to nurture me, that will actually push them forward many, many times. And so how do we tap into that? How do we figure that out, right? So the key thing here is that we need to recognize we all think very, very differently. We all have very different experiences, especially when it comes to age group dynamics, where an experienced person who has been in the industry for 20 years, they they have also found some patterns that work for them. And then a new person comes in, they are coming in from a different experience, coming up in a internet age and using technology in a different way and using mobile phones and being connected all the time. Their life experience is quite different, so their
Hmm.
way of working, their thinking patterns are quite different. So the right way to tap into that could be not to say, hey, I'm your boss, do this and this is how we do it. The right question to ask is, hey guys, I think this is the outcome that we are looking for. What do you think about that? Do you think we can do it? Yes, we can do it. Okay, what is the best way you think we can accomplish that? Okay, we can do it this way. Oh, that's interesting. But how about, we try the second step in this manner, because in the last project we tried it this way, it didn't work out. So what do you think about that? And that becomes like an exchange of ideas between two people or a group. And now people can understand what people are thinking, what is their life experience, what are the objections in their subconscious mind that are coming up. Now some of these objections are tangible, that are they are real objections, like we don't have money to hire another person. That's a valid objection. But some other objections are generally hidden subconscious things, where they say, oh, this is not secure enough. Why is it not secure enough? Oh, I don't know, I just doesn't feel secure enough to me, because I've had an experience in my past life where I was storing my personal photos on a hard drive and it crashed and I couldn't recover my photos. So that incident got stuck in their head. That's a personal experience that they had. And now because of that past experience, they are coming up with new objections. Until and unless we sort of drill down into that, ask these probing questions, why do you think that way, we won't be able to get to the bottom of that issue. And it takes time, it takes trust for people to be able to open up and talk about these things. But you have to create that safe environment and say, hey guys, all of us, we have been through some real challenges in our life. Nobody gets to this point um, without any overcoming any challenges. So we all have things in the past that we are not totally proud of, that we are not very thrilled about, that we are not really open about. But it's okay, we are all the same. So in this safe environment, whatever comes up, it is all to help the greater good of the team. And when people start feeling that, they can start to open up and they can start to really bring about their real objections, their real pain points, not the ones that they think are safe to talk about in a professional environment.
Now that's a really so there's a lot there to unpack that in what you just said.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of it's trust building,
Mhm.
like you said, creating the safe space for people to express and at some level be vulnerable, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah, exactly,
Um,
exactly.
right now, it's been really challenging to do that over the last 10 months.
Mhm.
Um, we all have very high hopes for the
Yeah,
vaccines that are
yeah,
being rolled out.
yeah,
Yet, realistically, we're not going to be back to normal
yeah,
anytime soon.
yeah,
And it's also concerning that at the same time as vaccines are rolling out, there is discussion of possible new strains of COVID.
yeah, yeah,
So all of that together leads to us as leaders having to do this.
yeah. Mhm.
And it kind of sounds like it's servant leadership on steroids in a way, um, remotely. What recommendations do you have for people for leaders to how to do be able to do this in a remote environment in during COVID? Because we're entering the next stage of turmoil, which is, can we go back? Maybe not. Little by little. What state? What county? What city?
Yeah,
Um, so it's going to be another period of significant uncertainty.
yeah,
So, what tips would you have for leaders about how they can handle this when they
yeah,
can't
yeah,
go and put their arm around
yeah,
the
yeah,
person who literally
Yeah.
who has a challenge
Sure,
or
sure,
needs help. You know, we can
sure.
only meet virtually like we are now
Yeah, yeah,
or on the
of
phone.
course, of course. Yeah. So for one thing, first let's talk about the crisis, right? So we are going through this crisis, but this is nothing new. I mean, the pandemics have happened before.
Right,
You know,
right.
we have
But let's let that sink in. It's
yeah,
nothing new. So that's a really important statement, sir.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And we have to, as humans, you know, this is interesting about our minds. We recognize the patterns, but we actually are very quick to forget the patterns as well if
Oh,
they
interesting.
don't if they don't exist in our immediate reality, if they don't affect our immediate reality or the people we love, we tend to forget those patterns very quickly. So if we go look at past pandemics, you can see the graphs of actually how humans behave. It's very, very consistent. There is always a first wave, there's always a second wave which is much bigger than the first wave, and then that's followed by third or fourth wave. Because as humans we are exactly the same. We first get scared, and then we get tired of all the commotion, and then we let our caution go. That causes the second wave, and then slowly third wave, fourth wave. So that's one thing. Now, pandemic is one of the challenges that humans face. It doesn't mean that we don't have other challenges, right? So we have to recognize that just because another challenge has been put on our table, it doesn't mean we don't have any other challenges. Climate change, I mean, if you believe in it, there are other types of diseases, AIDS, opioid pandemic, all that is going on at the same time. But none of those things affected us personally. That's why it didn't exist in the world, right? Now it is affecting us personally. That's why it's becoming a huge issue. So that's one thing. We have to recognize, life is just full of challenges. Let's just live with that. Now the next thing is, how do we support our people, how do we get them to open up, is by opening up ourselves, becoming a little bit more self-aware. What is bothering us? What is my story? If I share my story with you, it will prompt you to share your story. For example, I could say, hey, I had a really tough time sleeping yesterday. I was trying to work on this problem, and my kid won't go to sleep. I was trying to put him to bed, and ultimately I had to give up and ask him to come to my bed and at least get a few hours of sleep so I can have enough energy for the next day. Now that is my story. I'm sharing with my team so that they can tell me a little bit about what they are going through, and then we can sort of exchange some ideas. Hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? But if I just come in as a boss and say, hey, how come you have not done this? Like, I assigned this to you, and I expect outcome. What the hell is going on? And now what I'm saying is, I do not care what is going on in your personal life. What are your priorities? What is bothering you? I just want my stuff done, which is where that disconnect starts to happen now, right?
So, I mean, there are two critical things there, but I think the realization that this is a big deal, but there have been plenty of other big deals.
Yeah,
There were other people living with really
yeah,
big deals
yeah,
while this was not occurring.
yeah,
Is a really interesting perspective to take.
yeah,
It's actually very stoic in thinking in terms of in terms of classical Stoicism, Seneca or Epictetus, thinking about how yes, there's a challenge, but everybody's facing a challenge everywhere, somewhere,
yeah,
some at
exactly.
all
Yeah,
times. So
exactly.
you're not the first, you're not the last.
Yeah,
Get on with your day at
yeah,
some level. But then on the flip side of that, acknowledging that there's a challenge, that people are facing it, and then sharing how you're handling it.
yeah,
So in terms of that type of mindset and that interaction, how do you feel that might be different between the different age groups that we're dealing with, between baby boomers and
yeah,
Gen X and millennial, and now whatever's after millennial? I
yeah.
think Gen Z, perhaps they're
Sure,
calling them.
sure, sure, sure.
Uh, Wherever that fits in,
Yeah, yeah,
how do
yeah,
you see the different approaches breaking down, and
yeah.
what might their applications be in industry?
Sure. See, the fundamental it doesn't fundamental human motivation is to be understood by other people. That is a universal thing, and that transcends age, sex, locality, uh, you know, anything that you can say. Every human wants to be understood by others. And um, what that means is, what are my priorities, where I'm coming from, what is important to me, and the way that I look at life. If you can understand my point of view, then we can work together, right? So um, when we say millennials, Gen Z, everybody, and even people in their 60s, 70s, they just want to be understood well by their peers and by other groups. So how do we do that? First of all, we need to be self-aware of ourselves. We cannot understand other people if we don't understand ourselves. So there is a good exercise that a lot of therapists, a lot of people do, which is find out your why. We all have a fundamental why we do things, why we like. That is the driving force in our life. So some people like innovation, some people like to break new ground, some people like to relax, some people like to entertain themselves. So these are the fundamental sort of driving forces in our lives. And when we want to connect with other people, when we want to collaborate, we need to understand their why, their motivations, and and meet them where they are. So Gen Z does not have a lot of experience, but they have a lot of hopes for the future. um, and they have a lot of different ways of looking at things because they have grown up with different gadgets, different paradigms. As an experienced person, we are a little bit more pessimistic because we have gone through life, and we know that whatever you think life is going to be, it's not
Right.
going to be exactly like that. So now, as an experienced person, we tend to say to younger people, oh, you don't know how life is going to be. Like, when I was your age, this is what's going to happen, what used to happen. When I was your age, this is what used to happen, right? So what we are doing is, we are fundamentally taking our stance where we are standing and just yelling at them, hey, do it this way. But if we go back and think about our teenage years and our early 20s, our parents used to say the same thing, and it used to annoy the heck out of us as well,
Right, of course.
right? So why don't we say, okay, I know I have more experience, I will meet you where you are. I will come down from my pedestal, and I will meet you where you are and say, I know that you have a lot of hopes for the future. What do you wish to accomplish? How do you think I can help you to get there? And now they will start to open up, because now you are talking about their priorities. Now you are trying to understand them, right? And then they will open up. But if we just keep giving them our rule book that is applicable to our lives, it is not going to work, because we are on a different path than another individual. Even if they are working in the same environment on the same project, their priorities in life could be very different. So that is how we can meet them where they are, by asking them, hey, I will put my belief system aside, I will put my um, rule book aside. Let me try to understand what you think, and then you guide them, wherever you want to guide them to.
That's really remarkable, because it's a mixture of coaching. It's a mixture of mentorship, but at the same time, you're not giving ground either,
Yeah,
right? Because you're focusing on this is the common outcome, and we have to
yeah,
get to that outcome.
exactly.
Um, Now, when we think about how we're going to work together off this planet,
Yeah,
I want to ask you to extend your ideas off world with
yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah,
Um, right? There a lot has been made of the fact that astronauts and cosmonauts work together at the International Space
yeah,
Station.
yeah,
For example, and they're meeting each other halfway. Cosmonauts must become fluent in English.
yeah, yeah,
Astronauts must become fluent in Russian
yeah,
to do missions there,
yeah, yeah,
because if you have to be able to communicate when you're reliant upon each other to stay alive.
yeah,
It's pretty fundamental.
yeah,
Um, Now, but as we move beyond that to commercial orbital habitats,
yeah,
to national and international bases on the moon
yeah. Mhm.
and Mars, how do you see these team dynamics playing out in those extreme environments? And
Yeah.
do you see them changing? What or staying the same, or are
Yeah.
there certain fundamental things that we can extend, but other things we have to change. I'd
Yeah.
love to have you
Sure,
dissect
sure.
those ideas a little bit.
Sure. I think you answered your own question. The thing is that if I go to an ambitious person who wants to enter space industry, and I say the first prerequisite will be for you to learn Russian, but there is a choice. You can work in another agency where you don't have to learn Russian and you'll get similar experience. There is a way out for them, and they will opt for not learning Russian because there are choices available. Now, in outer space, there is no choice available. So, as humans, we are very, very good at adapting, right? If the choice is taken away and our survival or our, again, intrinsic motivation relies on that resource, we are very much capable of overcoming our own beliefs and adapting to that. But if there's a choice, we will always pick the easier choice because we are always also lazy. uh,
It's
so
just we're as a species, there's a lazy factor, huh?
yeah,
That's
exactly,
funny.
exactly. Yeah. So that is the key thing. If we go to Mars, and we know there are 100 people on Mars, and that's it, we have to like get along. I think it will be a much more peaceful society than here on Earth, because on Earth we have so much choice available. It's my way or the highway. But over there on Mars, if you say that, there is no my way or the highway. It is our way. That's it, right?
And so if you're building teams for that, how do you what would you focus on in building the team, both in terms of selecting the people and also in helping the team have the right mindset?
Yeah. Again, here is self-awareness that comes in, because what happens is that conflict, the fundamental reason for conflict is not understanding each other. Any war, any divorce, any kind of conflict you can look at, it starts with one conversation, right? One conversation where two parties do not agree upon whatever opinions they have, right? And that is because they are looking at the same thing from a different perspective. So let's say if I show you, if I show you a ball which is colored green on one side, a yellow on another side, and two people are looking at the same ball from different angles, one person will say it's yellow, one person will say it's green, and they will not agree until they are able to see each other's perspective, right? And that can lead to a conflict, that can lead to any kind of unpleasant outcome. But if we just switch the ball and say, okay, what do you think now? They will say, oh, okay, I didn't know that this was yellow and green. Oh, now I understand both of you. Both of them will get along.
Right.
So the idea here is to be able to have the capability of looking at other people's perspective, and that comes from self-awareness. Because as soon as you see the conflict arising in your mind, if it triggers the thought that, oh, why am I feeling uncomfortable about this? There must be a perspective I may be missing from the other person. Let me go get that perspective, rather than argue about that will be much more cohesive conversation than saying, hey, you have no idea what you're talking about, this is how it is done, right? So um, we always try to overemphasize our own opinion over others, right? So if we just take a moment and get the other person's perspective, maybe, just maybe, we can find a different angle to what we are trying to solve. So self-awareness is the key.
So as we build these teams, are we looking for people who we feel are already self-aware, and or can we help?
Yeah, yeah.
How can we help our team become more self-aware, and how would
Yes.
we do that?
Yeah, we can do that. There are certain psychological techniques, practices. Just like I said, one is, find out your why. That is a fundamental piece of self-awareness that most people do not know. What is their why? What drives them? So there are other factors. There are other subconscious values, core values that we live with, and those are all accumulated over time. I mean, generally all this happens before the age of 10. Okay. So you carry that experience for the rest of your life, living the values that you got during your first 10 years of existence. And you also you also have disappointments and hurt feelings and nightmares that follow you throughout your life from those first 10 years. Once you become self-aware, then you can fundamentally start to piece all the events in your life together and say, I now understand why this happened to me. I now understand why this happened to me, because it was I mean, it's Newton's law. Everything is energy in this universe, right? So every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If I had a bad experience in my childhood, it is going to have a positive experience in my later years of life, and vice versa. So it's about fundamentally understanding ourselves, and we can certainly help people become more self-aware.
It's interesting. I mean, it's almost like you're suggesting being your own historian in a way,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
And
very, very
and
good
and
exercise.
dissecting your personal history
Exactly.
to better understand yourself. So, Manoj, we're getting down into the bottom half of the hour. So I want to start looking ahead a little more
Yeah.
into 2021, and I'm curious as to what you see are some things that people really should keep in mind as we move forward into this year, into some interesting bits of uncertainty, and possibly what techniques they can use mentally to prepare themselves, and then to frankly survive
Yeah,
what's going to
yeah.
be another very interesting year.
Sure. Yeah, sure. See, humans have been here on this planet for say 200, 300,000 years, and last 12,000 years have been instrumental. We sort of invented fire and agriculture and civilization and whatnot. But each of those turning points in human existence were a result of a crisis, and
Mhm.
that you can apply at a global level, at a regional level, at a personal level. Every progress that happens in human life is a result of a crisis, because otherwise, as I said earlier, we are generally lazy. We don't want to like change
If
things.
we're comfortable, we're not going to
Yeah,
mess with it.
exactly. So when a crisis happens, people who are capable of adapting, they find new ways of doing things, and things improve as a result of that crisis, right? And people who are not capable of adapting, generally they fall behind, because the fundamental game has shifted now. People used to be able to say, or to make a deal, business deal, I had to fly to you, or you fly to me, shake hands, sign the papers in front of each other, look each other in the eye, and say, now we have a deal. If I propose to you, let's, I don't feel like flying today, can we just do it virtually? You will take offense of that. You're like, "Oh, I'm giving you a deal of a lifetime. You can't even fly for like, take a 5-hour flight. What is the deal with that, right?" So that you can see, it was just a perception, it was just a
Right.
belief that you need to be here, and that perception is gone like that, right? Nobody even gives a second thought about whether you are here or not, because that fundamentally has been wiped off of our psyche now, right? And that's because of a crisis. So as the crisis happens, fundamentally the situation has changed. As human beings, we have to adapt. Every species has to adapt, but
Right.
humans are the best at adapting, because we find the patterns and we pass on the knowledge through language to from generation to generation. So in 2021, be nimble, be vigilant of the changing environment, and be open to new ideas, new opportunities, and be open to change. Fundamentally change the way that you do work, and you play, and you interact with others, because that is what is going to happen over the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, we are not even at the beginning of this thing. The world is going to look very, very different in 5 years than we have right now.
No, that's a both exciting and in some ways frightening thought.
Mhm.
Right? Because change brings with it challenge, but also opportunity.
Yeah,
So, Manoj, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
yeah.
Before we sign off, I want to give you a chance. Just what else that we haven't talked about should we keep in mind? You've got such a wide breadth of experience, and have worked with so many different teams, helped them elevate themselves. What would you provide as some last ideas, perhaps, to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, see, the thing is, like, our society is very, very complex, and it doesn't need to be, because if we look at, if we peel off all the layers at the fundamental level as humans, we want happiness for ourselves, and we want happiness for our families, for our kids. We want growth. We want to enjoy our lives, and that's all this society is built to do. But the thing is that in the zeal of achieving more and more and more, we fundamentally forget those those paradigms. So if we just peel off those layers and say, okay, you as a human have the same priorities as me as a human, and we are all sort of working towards the same goal. You are picking a different path, I'm picking a different path, and let's help each other out in getting there. Then we will all be able to contribute to each other's growth and get there faster. But if we compete, obviously, not only we are going to waste our time and resources in competing with other people, but it will create hindrance for them. It will create hindrance for us. So it's a slow progress. So let's take example of other species, beehives, or take bees, sorry, or ants, or any other species. You will see their societies are built based on helping each other, collaborating, and that's why they work like clockwork. I mean, I haven't heard of a war in a bee colony or anything like that. And here we have limited resources. We draw lines on piece of land, and say, this is mine, this is yours. And then we fight over that. And not knowing that it's the same planet, same set of resources. And yeah, I mean, if we think that we are already on Mars and our survival depends on helping each other, I think things will be different.
Well, thank you so much, Manuj, for joining us. Folks, again, this is Manuj Aggarwal of Tetranoodle Technologies, a mindset master, a coach, and fundamental helper of businesses and teams. Thank you so much for joining us. And I really just love the last thought. Let's imagine that we are already on another planet, or on any planet, where we are dependent on each other for survival, and act as such. Uh,
Yeah,
how better to build a team than to focus on interdependence and collaborative achievement. Thank you
yeah,
so much.
exactly.
This is a perfect way to start us off for 2021, and to have the right mindset to move forward together. Take
Thank you
care,
so much for
everyone, and
having
thank
me.
you
Thank
again
you.
for joining us on Space Talks with Z. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Manoj.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.